So Joe Biden just gave an address to the nation, and I said that if he drops out, I said this obviously before he did, that we should all give him an ovation. If you can, a standing ovation. We can't get up because we're strapped in here, but go outside, go wherever you are, and now it's late at night, but record yourself, record your neighbors, give the brother a standing ovation. He did the right thing. So no, listen, hear me out. So nobody wanted him to leave the race more than I did. And we fought like hell for 10 months to make that happen, and it happened. But there's a giant difference whether you do the right thing or you don't do the right thing at the end. So should he have done it earlier? Sure, of course, no one believed that more than I did. But when push came to shove, Donald Trump would not let go of power, even when he lost an election and it was over. He did a fake elector scheme, which I think was a coup against America. Joe Biden, yes, he was tested, and yes, it seemed like for a long time he wasn't gonna pass that test, but he did. With enough time left, he left the race and he let go of power. And so he mentioned there, country's much more important than personal ambition. And again, if you were frustrated as I was that it took a long time to get there, but the bottom line, brothers and sisters, is he got there. And this felt like, and you look at the speech, and I'm just trying to be positive here, but even the speech confirms that it was the right decision. It felt a little bit like House of Dragons, I think Viserys Targaryen handing it off to his daughter, but in this case, the vice president. And you could tell, he should have. And thank you for doing that. Thank you as a nation and as a party and as average American voters for stepping it down, stepping aside, putting your ego aside. I know that there was a lot of pressure to do that. I'm not at all naive about that. I'm one of the people who created that pressure. But at the end, when you do the right thing, when it matters most, you gotta give credit. So credit where credit is due. Thank you, President Biden.
So I'll play bad cop because regardless of Biden making the right decision in the final hour, I can't ever stand up and applaud a guy who aided and abetted the slaughter that's currently taking place in Gaza right now. So good that Biden finally realized that he's actually sacrificing the Democratic Party, leading to division within the Democratic Party by refusing to drop out of the race. He did so, again, like more than a month after that disastrous debate performance, thus robbing Kamala Harris, who's now the presumptive Democratic nominee, incredibly important and precious time to campaign, to fundraise, to do what's necessary to beat their political opponent, Donald Trump. And so, yes, I get it. I understand that urge, and you're not doing this, Cenk, to be fair. I understand that urge to engage in what we're seeing all over social media with all of these lawmakers, on their hands and knees, like praying to Joe Biden, making him out to be some sort of messiah. I refuse to engage in that. He did the right thing late, if you ask me, but that also doesn't erase the horrific policies that he was willing to co-sign before he dropped out of the race, before that disastrous debate performance. All of that stuff still exists. A few important things to point out about the speech. He made clear that he is not going to resign as president. You've had Republican lawmakers urging him to resign, arguing that, well, if he can't run a campaign, well, then he shouldn't be running the country. That's a little different, right? Running a campaign, attempting to win as president or re-election as president would mean that he thinks that he could serve another 4 years. Clearly, Joe Biden can't. He also said something that I do agree with, which is he needed to drop out and unify his party, the Democratic Party. And that clearly has happened. So he gets credit for that. He also took credit for a bunch of policies that he didn't actually accomplish, including lowering prescription drug prices. But look, I get it. He wants to go out with a bang. He wants to go out by bragging about what he allegedly accomplished during his presidency. It is what it is. But I would never stand up and give him a standing ovation.
Yeah, but Anna, so look, you don't have to convince me of the downsides of Joe Biden. So I, was very adamant against his policy in Gaza, a lot of lip service, but at the end, funding the atrocities that happened in Gaza and never really breaking from not just Israel, but Benjamin Netanyahu. And I think that he would have actually helped our ally Israel more if he had broken with Netanyahu and not funded the atrocities that happened there. I think that people pretend he's FDR 2.0 and as if he was enormously progressive and got his whole agenda passed. No, he got about 15% of his agenda passed, and of that, the great majority was money going to corporations first, and then eventually we hope a little bit to the American people. But he had good positive things that others were not able to accomplish: climate change legislation, 15% minimum tax on corporations. We've talked about the upsides and the downsides. So I'm not here to rewrite history and tell you he was God's gift to populism and the average American, etc., as a lot of Democratic propagandists does. And I'm certainly not going to say that he did this perfectly voluntarily. Of course he had to be pushed, and pushed very, very significantly. It was not an easy task. But having said that, when you're in the middle of that push, I believe in carrots and sticks. I believe in doing correct political strategy, okay? So the stick was, if you don't get out of the race, A, you're going to lose, B, you're going to be humiliated, C, you're going to lose the thing that you potentially care most about, your legacy. Okay, so I acknowledge all those things. Of course, I told you those things. Those were the sticks and they were correct. The carrot was, but if you do drop out, the deal is bygones be bygones. And so I'm delivering on that deal here. It is bygones be bygones. We have enough time. I told you earlier in the live show today that I now think Kamala Harris has gone from 50-50 to being the favorite. So we went from a near zero chance to being the favorites now to defeat Donald Trump because of the one decision that Joe Biden had to make and ultimately did make, which was the step down.
I will give credit for one thing in regard to when he decided to step down from the presidential race. He could have made the decision to do it prior to the Republican National Convention. He didn't do that because had he done that and had it been clear at that time that Kamala Harris would be the presumptive Democratic nominee, well, the RNC would have played out very differently and they would have focused their attention on attacking Kamala Harris. Biden's timing deprived Republicans of being able to do that. So if that was in fact intentional, I guess well played.
No, definitely not intentional. He waited to the last possible moment.
Okay, then,
but it's okay.
Then I take it away.
No. But at the end, it wound up being helpful. It wound up being helpful. It doesn't matter why. It wound up being helpful. So I agree with you that was terrific, whether it was intended or not. So look, last things I'll say is, at the DNC, he is going to get thunderous applause, right? And so I would say, hey, since he made the right decision, great, wonderful. Anna would say, we're both right. Yeah, but a little overhyped, and don't tell me that he was this magnanimous guy when we saw the process. But remember, history won't remember any of that. Well, the only thing they'll remember is that he stepped aside. And they won't remember that it took this long. They'll remember it a little bit. But we have 4 months left. It's plenty of time. So it's just, I cannot emphasize enough how overwhelming it is that he made the right decision at the end. So because it goes from Trump's gonna be president and God knows what happens, to now Trump is likely to not be president. It's just, that decision could not be larger.
I would not say likely. It's now a competitive race as opposed to a race that was not at all competitive when Biden was running against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Okay. And one other thing I'll note is, look, Nancy Pelosi apparently went to Biden and his staff and said, look, we can do this the easy way, and I'm gonna give you about 3 weeks of the easy way. After that, we could do this the hard way. And Biden made his decision before Nancy Pelosi engaged in the hard way.
No, I'm aware of all of that. And so, but I will down credit where credit is due to Nancy Pelosi, a person I've criticized endless times. And I often mocked this whole idea that she was a master legislator. But you know what? When push came to shove and the country was on the line, Nancy Pelosi did a brilliant job of organizing things behind the scenes to get Biden to make the right decision. She also used carrots and sticks. Actually, I think this was her finest hour. I've never seen her do strategy better than this.
I agree.
And she galvanized others that are so important in the party, like Barack Obama, yes, the donors, unfortunately, and other representatives. She kept people from supporting Biden too enthusiastically, which is their normal inclination. So, and who made a bigger difference than Joe Biden dropping out? Me running a desperate primary against him, you guys doing the petitions, etc. I think you guys made a giant difference. And I talk about how important it was that you tried to make a difference, and it worked. It worked, and now we have hope. And you were right. But our job is to be honest. Nancy Pelosi made a much larger difference. And so Pelosi had as big a hand in this as anyone. And I don't say that in a negative light. I say it in an enormously positive light, because she normally sticks with the establishment and she normally would have circled the wagons. But seeing that reality that they were going to lose, and that they were going to lose the House as well, that she cares so much about, she rallied the troops to do the right thing when it's easier for us, we're on the outside, when it was very difficult for her on the inside. Also give credit to Barack Obama, David Axelrod, James Carville, Ezra Klein, Nate Silver, Charlemagne the God, Jon Stewart, all these people who were instrumental in making the push. And then finally, of course, to Joe Biden for at least getting there. And again, one last time, Scranton, he gives that speech, and I've told you guys 100 times, come on, Joe, you've been in Washington for the last 50, 60 years. This whole play, this theater of how you're regular Joe from Scranton, I just never found it to be credible. But tonight, as he's stepping down and passing the torch, as he said, when he talked about his roots all the way in the beginning and how he was a little kid in Scranton, and it's true, he was not born into a rich family. He was not born into a powerful or connected family. And for that little kid to be behind the Resolute desk for the first time, that landed for me. And it landed for me because he was being magnanimous and he was doing the right thing. So when you do that, then I say, attaboy, Joe, and thank you for doing what you did. I thank you on behalf of the voters, the average Americans, the Democratic Party, and the country.